Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let's put our hands together to welcome our guest of honor, Minister Josephine Teo, to join us for today's event. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Singapore International Cyber Week Women in Cyber 2022. I'm Jamie, and I'm very privileged to be your host for today. The theme for SICW Women in Cyber 2022 is Breaking Barriers and Strengthening Platforms to Support Our Female Cybersecurity Professionals. In its fourth edition of CSA's SICW Women initiative, this event will feature sharing by international cybersecurity leaders and practitioners across the public and private sectors on the challenges they face and how platforms can be strengthened to provide support for female cybersecurity professionals. We are proud to present a program with distinguished guests and speakers who are experts in their field. To begin this conference proceedings, it gives me great pleasure to invite our guest of honor, Mrs. Josephine Teo, Minister for Communications and Information, and Second Minister for Home Affairs, and Minister in charge of Smart Nation and Cybersecurity, to give her opening address. Minister Teo, please.
Distinguished guests, colleagues and friends, and for that I mean friends based in Singapore as well as everyone who has made the time and effort to join us in our city. Good afternoon, and I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to speak with you on a topic that is close to my heart, which is women in cyber, and more broadly, women in tech. This is the fourth edition of the Singapore International Cyber Week Women in Cyber event, at a time when cyber threats have become more prominent. I'm very encouraged to see today's growing representation of women among cybersecurity leaders and practitioners, both locally and internationally. And I suggest, in all humility, that we use this occasion to celebrate the progress that women in cyber have made, whilst keeping our eye on the future, whilst still retaining a sense of dissatisfaction that more is needed and more can be done. As always, we want to focus on nurturing women, cyber talents, as well as leaders. This is built upon our efforts to develop a sustainable pipeline through drawing from diverse talent pools. Why is this necessary? The answer has been obvious for some time, and it is because demand for cybersecurity professionals far outstrips supply. We constrain ourselves unnecessarily if we don't tap varied sources, including women, who now make up only about a quarter of the cybersecurity workforce globally. In Singapore, we are proactively developing multiple pathways to crowd in more talents at different levels of our ecosystem. Under the umbrella of the National Singapore Cyber Talent Initiative, the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, CSA, has introduced programs targeted at youths as well as women. Over the past 3 years, the Singapore Cyber Youth Initiative has reached out to over 11,000 students through cybersecurity boot camps, learning journeys, school talks, and career mentoring sessions. We've found this to be extremely useful because not everyone knows about the opportunities in cyber. Not everyone feels sufficiently informed about what it will take for them to enter these fields or to succeed. So these sessions give the students a flavor of cybersecurity and the kind of community they can be part of. Similarly, the Singapore Cyber Women initiative has engaged over 2,400 women and girls to encourage them to take up roles in cybersecurity. This program complements our wider efforts to attract women to join the tech sector in Singapore through the Infocom Media Development Authority's Women in Tech program. CSA also proactively encourages and facilitates mid-career professionals to transit into cybersecurity job roles through career conversion programs. These are people who have been in the workforce for some time. They may be in their 30s, they may be in their 40s, they may even be in their 50s. And they may or may not have been in IT-related or security-related roles. And so as a result, they may not have the skill sets to take up the many job opportunities that are emerging in cybersecurity. And so one example of an intervention we have introduced is the Cybersecurity Associates and Technologists Program, which is a company-led training program jointly developed by the CSA and the IMDA. We say it's company-led because the curriculum and what is shared and trained for the participants in these programs is very much determined by the company's needs. And so the participants know very well that their skills are sought after. We also partner with organizations that are plugged into business networks and the startup ecosystem in Singapore, such as SG Innovate, which provides intensive training for participants to take on cybersecurity roles through their PowerX cybersecurity program. Beyond frontline cyber defenders, Singapore is also developing talent at the forefront of cybersecurity research and development. In July this year, CSA, together with the Singapore University of Technology and Design, launched a scholarship program named the CSA I Trust Master of Science in Security by Design Scholarship. The program aims to encourage STEM professionals to enter the field of operational technology cybersecurity, OT cybersecurity. We are, of course, committed to doing more to develop advanced cybersecurity expertise. And so today, I'm pleased to announce that CSA will be launching another program. This is the CSA National Cybersecurity R&D Laboratory Scholarship. It's quite a mouthful. But essentially, what does it seek to do? It wishes to nurture R&D talents at the postgraduate level, to have deep knowledge of cybersecurity in order that they can contribute to the cybersecurity ecosystem, build capabilities within companies, and also the broader ecosystem. Up to 40 NCLS scholarships will be awarded over the next 3 years to students pursuing master's degree in computer science, engineering, and other cybersecurity-related fields at the National University of Singapore. Now, these fields of study don't seem particularly steep in cybersecurity, and so where is the cybersecurity element? Well, the scholars will be able to receive training in research and undertake cybersecurity R&D experiments using the advanced computing and simulation capabilities at NUS. In other words, they will get practice-oriented experience, and we hope that the skills that they acquire will help to enhance our ecosystem. We welcome anyone who has the passion for cybersecurity and an interest in leveling up Singapore's cybersecurity capabilities to come on board. So let me now touch on gender diversity in cyber leadership. As we encourage more women to join the cybersecurity domain, we must continue to dismantle barriers that stand in the way of women rising to the top. These two imperatives go hand in hand. Women with leadership potential must see that they will be accepted and have opportunity to go far. Why else would they invest their time and energies in this domain? We would therefore otherwise not succeed in attracting and retaining women talents. And so to build a strong local cybersecurity leadership core, CSA launched the Cybersecurity Strategic Leadership Program with the Singapore Management University in September this year. The program aims to strengthen the knowledge, leadership, and networks of Singapore's current and future cybersecurity leaders to advance their respective organizations more effectively. The inaugural run of this program saw a cohort of 21 participants. These are C-suite level, and they are executives with experience in the cybersecurity industry from both the public and the private sectors. Now, of these 21, there was just 3 women. Far too few, far lower than what we'd like to see, but it's a start. Among this pioneer cohort was Miss Camilla Chan. Where's Camilla? She should be here today. There she is. Round of applause. One of 3 lady musketeers in the inaugural cohort. You may or may not know this. Camilla is very impressive. She founded a Flexon, a company which specializes in hardware-based cybersecurity solutions. I think in this community, I think you are keenly aware that some cybersecurity solutions are software-based. She decided to do something hardware-based because hopefully it's harder to break that way. One of her biggest motivations for starting her own company was to create a workplace where everyone, regardless of gender, background, or job role, focuses on value creation. She believes passion, determination, and hard work are the key drivers of success, certainly not one's gender. I support her view, and I certainly hope to see more women like Camilla in leadership roles in our cybersecurity community. I hope that each one of you in your areas of influence makes the effort to nurture women with a passion for cyber. Cyber will be more successful with women on board, and women can be successful in cyber. I believe that and hope that you do too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. And may we now invite you to remain on stage for a photo opportunity. And we'll also like to invite the speakers and the panelists for today's program to join Minister Teo on stage for this photo opportunity. Thank you. Oh, I can see that we have a bevy of photographers here today. So we're gonna need your patience on this, ladies. Okay? Okay, thank you so much, Minister Teo. And to our speakers and panelists as well, we'd like to invite you guys to take your seats, please. Quick reminder for our next sessions, or actually for the next 2 panel sessions, we'll be using Slido for the Q&A segments. Please use the camera function on your smartphone to scan the QR code shown on the screens right now to input your questions for our panel of speakers. You guys are all cyber experts here, so you probably know how that works. I feel kind of stupid explaining it to you. Okay, now we're going to be moving on to our first panel discussion, Building the Next Generation of Cyber Leaders. Let's call upon our moderator first, and it's Dr. Ming Tan, Founding Executive Director of Tech for Good Institute. Joining her on stage, we have Ms. Gwenda Fong, Assistant Chief Executive, Strategic Planning and Digital Readiness, Infocom Media Development Authority of Singapore. Next, Ms. Kemba Walden, Principal Deputy National Cyber Director of the White House. Dr. Dorit Dor, Chief Product and Technology Officer, Checkpoint Software Technologies. And last but not least, Ms. Tay B. King, President of Cisco ASEAN. Dr. Tan, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me all right? Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon to our distinguished guests who are here, as well as beaming in from through your cameras, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our session, Building the Next Generation of Cyber Leaders. My name is Ming, and I'm the founding executive director of the Tech for Good Institute. The Tech for Good Institute was founded by Grab with a mission to leverage the promise of technology and the digital economy for a more inclusive, sustainable, and equitable Southeast Asia. And at the Tech for Good Institute, we believe that such growth is more than about a digital transformation of society, of economy, but also of government, of society, and community. And the pandemic really demonstrated how much can be achieved through technology, but also showed what is at stake for countries to be digital ready and resilient. And so our conversation today contributes to how and who should lead this continued evolution to a safe, trusted, and secure ecosystem for all. I would like to thank the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, the organizers of the Singapore International Cyber Week. It's so important to bring the public and private sectors together, given the shared responsibility for cybersecurity and cyber resiliency across the economy and throughout society. And at the same time, the Asia-Pacific region has the largest regional cybersecurity workforce gap at 1.42 professionals as of 2021. So to discuss building this next generation of cyber leaders that we need so badly, I'm excited to introduce today's cyber leaders. On my left, we've got Ms. Gwenda Fong, Assistant Chief Executive in Strategic Planning and Digital Readiness at the Infocom Media Development Authority of Singapore. And in this role, Gwenda oversees the formulation of strategies for Singapore in the digital economy supported by research. She's also responsible for the agency's digital readiness efforts to develop and implement programs that drive digital access and adoption amongst all Singaporeans. And prior to joining IMDA, she was Assistant Chief Executive for Policy and Corporate Development at the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, where she led the development of national strategies and plans to tackle risks in the cyber domain. And she has a very long CV as well, which we'll stop there. And next we have Ms. Kemba Walden, Principal Deputy National Cyber Director in the Office of the National Cyber Director of the United States. Kemba is an attorney by training with extensive experience in the government and private sector. Previously, she served as Assistant General Counsel at Microsoft's Digital Crimes Unit, where she was responsible for launching and leading its ransomware program. And prior to joining Microsoft, Kemba spent a decade in government service at the US Department of Homeland Security and most recently at the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Kemba serves on the Cyber Safety Review Board and is also a teacher as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. Next, we have Dr. Dorrit Dorr, Chief Product and Technology Officer of Checkpoint Software Technologies. Many of us probably very familiar with Checkpoint. Dorrit manages all product definition and development functions at Checkpoint, leading product management, research and development, and quality assurance initiatives from concept to delivery. And Dorrit is also an accomplished academic and an inventor with scientific publications for her research on graph decomposition, median selection, and geometric pattern matching in D-dimensional space. And in 1993, Dorrit won the Israel National Defense Prize. Welcome, Dorrit. And finally, we welcome Ms. Tay B. King, President for Cisco Systems in Southeast Asia. And she brings more than 2 decades of experience in the enterprise technology industry across Asia-Pacific, Japan, and China. B. King established the Cisco Singapore Co-Innovation Center and the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence in Singapore and is passionate about the importance of STEM education for youth and especially for women. So we're so honored to have all of you here with us today. So before we start, we had that QR code launch, and we actually have over 35% of us being here as seasoned professionals ripe to be leaders with more than 5 years experience. But what I'm also really excited by is that we have 16% who are contemplating that switch to cybersecurity. So guys, this is our opportunity to really convince them that this is actually a really good move. The theme of of the entire Cyber Week is shared responsibility. And we often hear that cybersecurity is not just a job of one person or one unit or just a CISO, but everyone in the organization. So maybe as a first question, Kemba, can I ask you to start with a career spanning both the public and private sectors? How may cyber leaders really foster an appreciation for and a culture of cybersecurity within large organizations and across society?
Well, thank you for that question, and thank you for hosting me here. I'm humbled to be among such an august panel here. I have a few thoughts about that. We've been talking about collaboration. Cybersecurity is a team sport. You've heard all of these things before, but I'll also offer an additional layer to that, which is that diversity of thought, diversity of professions, diversity is a non-negotiable to achieve what we're trying to achieve. And I have 3 specific reasons for that. And this is something that, regardless of whether you're in the private sector or in the government, it's sort of my pull through. So 3 reasons. The first is that we don't do cyber, none of us do cyber up here on the stage. I posit just for the sake of cyber. Cyber delivers on certain objectives. My North Star is that we want to make sure that communities thrive in this interconnected world. Communities are by nature diverse, right? So we need a diverse cybersecurity population, a diverse cybersecurity workforce to enable thriving communities in the internet. My second reason is that cyberspace is a complex space with systems that involve technology, people, and processes. But it's a complex area that requires complex thought, and not any one person has the right answer or the same critical thinking skills, right? So that together we have a geometric outcome in that space. So we have a diverse system, we have a diverse set of communities that we're trying to achieve safety in the internet. And then the third is transgressors in cyberspace, whether they're cyber criminals or nation states, are also diverse. So we need diverse thinking. And when I say diverse, I mean diverse in thought, I mean gender diversity, I mean neurodiversity, all sorts of diversity in this space in order to achieve what we need to achieve, to meet the transgressors, to be able to deliver for communities, and to be able to think through complex problems. But that's true. I know your question was specific to private and public, but that's just true regardless of public, private, nonprofit, academic.
Across the board.
All across the board.
Thank you so much. I love the analogy of this being a team sport, which is fantastic. Be King, I'd love you to pick up on that, because some say that a cybersecurity professional is only as good as his or her network, or maybe his or her team, right? And given the need for that information sharing, the trusted relationship, sometimes even using back channels that really foster that safe and secure cyberspace for all, how do we develop an innovative cybersecurity ecosystem that leverages private and public partnerships and other forms of collaboration?
Definitely cyber is a team sport, and I so agree with you, Gamba, that diversity is so important. The team sport actually is not just the team. The team sport is government, enterprise, institution, education. So there are a couple of things that, maybe I go back to what Cisco have done in the past few years. First is education. How we collaborate with the education sector to make sure, like what Minister Josephine Teo mentioned, that we need to have the people ready to take up the jobs that are coming up. So we have this institution called Cisco Net Academy that we established in 1997. And part of the curriculum for us, because it evolved the curriculum, right? Part of the curriculum for us is cyber, because we realize how important it is. In ASEAN, we trained about 1.4 million people, and this is part of the tech for good that we're talking about. And for Singapore, it's about 100,000, so that's education. But we also need to go deep into research, which is also what Minister said. So we have a collaboration as well with NUS, supported by National Research Institute, where we work with the researcher to go deep into the cyber area. And one of the things that we are focusing on is about the critical CIIs, the CIIs, to ensure that the CII's infrastructure are strengthened, and how do we do it? And of course, thirdly, is the institute, the private sector itself, where how do we share information when we have, or share the threat landscape, right? And a lot of times is actually all this information sharing, the best practice that's very important. And what we do have is with private institution as well as CSA, we do have a partnership with CSA to be able to do that.
Thank you so much. You know, I'd like to move a little bit from getting ready and having the right structures in place to what happens potentially when incidents might happen, right? They will span business, financial, operational, legal, communications, and human aspects. And so cybersecurity professionals, above and beyond the very technical, deep elements, they often have to talk about this balancing act. They have to talk about the technical, they have to be able to talk about it from a business perspective, and it's all about balancing investment to manage the risk, the opportunity cost versus accepting the risk and being able to bring others on board with those decisions. Because at the end of the day, trust is at stake, right? So Gwenda, perhaps you could share a little from your work at IMDA as well as from CSA. What are your thoughts on the multiple perspectives that cybersecurity leaders have to hold in their heads at all times? The multiple perspectives that they have to balance in their heads.
Thanks for the question, Ming. So I think cyber leaders really need to be bilingual, and it's perhaps much easier said than done. But what I mean by being bilingual is you need to be sufficiently technical to understand the systems, the networks, the risks that your enterprise environment could face, but at the same time be able to articulate, as you have said, to be able to articulate what the risks are, the business risks, the non-technical aspects, and the trade-offs and the balance points to the C-suite, to the board members, in order for the right decisions to be made with regard to resource allocation or how much funding you're going to get for the networks that you need to protect. Very often people think of cybersecurity as a technical domain, and certainly there is a technical aspect, but I think once you rise to the level of cybersecurity leadership, you need to be able to communicate with the non-technical leadership, the people who are making the decisions. And to do so, you need to be able to articulate it as a balance between security, cost, and usability. And there isn't a single right balance point for all organizations. It really depends on the nature of your business. So you need to have that level of strategic trade-off and discussion to decide what is the right balance point for the organization and what sorts of resources needs to be poured in. So I think the most important attribute or trait of a cybersecurity leader is to be able to communicate a very deeply technical and complex set of issues and considerations, but in an easy to understand way for the non-technical people in the boardroom to understand and to be able to support with resources.
Thank you. From domain expertise to building relevance for the whole organization. Now we step outside the organization and Dorrit. As part of the growing cybersecurity industry, I'd like us to think outside of the organization and think about, for the digital transformation for whole economies and for societies, we need safe cyberspaces and resilience from a whole of society perspective. So is there a bigger role, even beyond being able to communicate effectively within your organization? Is there a bigger role for cybersecurity leaders to champion what it means to have a cyber safe and a cyber resilient society?
Yes, certainly there is. I think that one of the challenges, I'll play it 3 steps, and the third one I think is the main challenge here. But step 1, you have to understand the play. You have to understand the cyberspace, the attack space, the defense space. You have to understand what are the trends, and they are changing all the time, because that's a changing space, which is great. That's about passionate. Everyone in a space needs to be passionate to this space. The second one is you need to be innovative in bringing original ideas to how to deal with it. It could be technology, it could be process, it could be tools, how to deal with it. And the third one, and that goes to the outside world more, once you've done the first 2 ones, you have to be optimistic. You have to think that we could defend the world. I mean, we think we are safe, but there are still accidents. We think they are safe, but there are still problems. But you have to be optimistic that we could defend the world, that prevention is possible. So don't surrender to, hey, the attacks are there, I'm going to do nothing about it. And I'll use the first 2 ones to explain and to be storytelling about why is it right for the world to stop attacks and to feel safer. And rather than it coming to kind of scare your audience, come to it as enable your audience to do something about it.
I love that. Hope, not fear. That's fantastic. Now, guys, we have a really special panel here because we have such a diverse, Kemba talked about diversity. We have a diverse group of speakers who actually all entered the cyberspace from very different backgrounds. And so may I invite each of you to share a key decision or influence that sort of got you to where you are, and at the same time maybe reflecting on what that would mean from your journey for the next generation of cyber leaders. B. King, I understand you started in accountancy and then switched to tech. So can I invite you to share maybe one key driver in your success and what that might mean for people who are looking to come into this space?
Yeah, I actually have a degree in accountancy. My ambition when I graduated was not to be in tech, it was to be in banking. And I wanted to be a private banker. That was my ambition. But I have actually 2 offers. One is from a tech company and the other one is from a bank when I graduated. And I don't know why I chose to be in tech. And I really, really have not regretted any time of my 20 over years in tech. And I love every minute of it. So for those 67% who are not in tech, who are not in cyber and still deciding, please do join because every minute, every second is so exciting.
Thank you. Gwenda, we talked about your roles in IMDA and at the CSA, but you've also held roles in health and defense. And I've heard your role described not so much as a policymaker, but more of a strategist. And so how did your previous roles in government, if someone's looking to be in public service, prepare you for your current roles? And how might you encourage others?
Okay, so maybe just a very quick background. I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering, so I was tech by training. Wasn't quite keen to do deep tech, but I really like operating at the policy level, so I dabbled in a whole bunch of different types of government policy in the Ministry of Defense, so that's where I kind of honed my sense, I suppose, in national security policies, then moved on to Ministry of Health, so social policies, and I kind of fell into cybersecurity almost by accident. I spent a year in London in 2016, 2017, and as I was looking for a job to come home to, the option of working with the cybersecurity agency came up as a possibility. So I did an interview over Skype, and I said, quite frankly, I don't have the right background in cybersecurity, because when I was back in university, cybersecurity wasn't even a thing. There was like one course in cryptography, and that's it. right? So I said, but I'm interested, I have sufficient tech background, I have a strong sense of national security policies, and the chief executive basically said, you're hired. You've got the right ingredients, you don't worry about not having the right knowledge specific to the job because you just have to learn on the job anyway. He told me that cybersecurity, everyone above a certain age, no one has a degree in cybersecurity. You kind of learn on the job, and he said with engineering, with national security, that's the right ingredients, right? So I took basically a leap of faith. I decided that it sounded interesting, it sounded like a really sunrise industry, and cybersecurity really is about de-risking technology, and because technology changes so quickly, as B. King said, you never have a dull day on the job because you're constantly learning about new technologies and how to better protect that. So,
Thank you. Dorrit, with someone who has had academic, applied, and commercial perspectives in your cybersecurity journey, what shaped your career being at this cutting edge of cybersecurity technology?
So I started off loving math and computer science. I actually don't know why, but I grew up and I realized that's what I like the most. So that's what I went to study. But actually, then when I kind of inspected my passion, it was about solving riddles and kind of bringing solutions. And cyber has a lot of it. So you have to not just learn, but also solve things. And it's very challenging. And you have an adversary, and it's great. And I think this is something you also do a lot in the academia. So you kind of, you are passionate in a space, and then you learn, and then you solve some problems. You really come to it in a way to really make it a better place, if you want. So I think cyber defense is about making it a better place through solving actual problems that are actually making life difference. And that's what got me into this. So in the academia, I was very much academic. I wrote papers in LaTeX, if you know what it is. But in practical life, I'm a very deep practitioner, and I like the fact that people use my product, and I like to meet users of technologies and other cyber defenses. And that's kind of another reason, I think, if you're looking for a place that really makes solutions that people really need and combine many disciplinaries, then this is the place for you.
Thank you. So we have the accountant, the engineer/regulator, and the mathematician/product developer. So we would not be complete without a lawyer, right? So, Kimber, you're legally trained. How did your training set you up for roles in government and in the private sector and cyber? And also maybe you can talk a little bit about, we heard from Minister Teo about how Singapore is looking to grow its cyber workforce, and maybe you can also offer some of your thoughts on that.
Sure, absolutely. So I am not a technologist. I don't have any sort of engineering background. But practicing law gave me a tool for a way to think, a way to solve problems, much like engineering gives you a tool to solve problems, math, accounting. They're just different tools of analysis. So my tool of analysis is through a legal lens. I came to cybersecurity, I think, because of my natural curiosity. I started off as a trade remedies lawyer. It was tedious. It's a lawyer that looked at imports into the United States. Then I became an export control lawyer. And then I became a lawyer for CFIUS. All of these things had to do with national security at one level or another. So I came at it from a national security perspective. All of the CFIUS, for those of you that don't know, it's the U.S. scheme for evaluating foreign investment into U.S. companies and identifying national security concerns and then mitigating them. The cases that were the most interesting to me were those cases that involved U.S. companies and cybersecurity concerns. I was at the Department of Homeland Security and ended up in the cybersecurity agency that's now known as CISA, the Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. And And so I was practicing cybersecurity there and ended up practicing cybersecurity law at Microsoft as well, to make the long story short. But the thing that drove me throughout my career, there were three things that needed to exist for me. And one was a sense of mission. That was not difficult to find in the Homeland Security. Was shocked to find it at Microsoft. I never thought I would be at a Fortune 500 company, but I found mission there. The second is that I'm able to add value. My critical thinking skills, my writing skills, whatever that is, I'm able to add value. And then the third is that I grow, that I'm developing, I'm learning. And cybersecurity is such a dynamic space that you can't help but to grow. And curiosity is key in my view to being successful in cybersecurity. In terms of workforce, I couldn't agree with Minister Tao more. We have, in the United States, I think the latest statistics I saw was something north of 750,000 unfilled jobs, with the title that includes the word cyber or IT in them. That is a problem. It's a national security problem. It's an economic development problem. It is a problem. And so our office has sought to solve this problem. We're optimistic that we are going to fill those 750,000 jobs. But then when we started to peel it back, we started to think about the board of directors that implicate cyber, lawyers, accountants that implicate cyber, those that facilitate the opportunities that cyber can bring. Then peeling that onion back further, we started to think about everyone, right? The communities that we are intending to serve by cyber, those that use cyber or use the internet, those that develop, but what do we do about children, K through 12, those that want to reskill, upskill, the mothers, grandmothers, small and medium businesses that are the flower shops of the world that don't necessarily work in that cyber space. So we've embarked on developing a cybersecurity workforce and education strategy that will address each one of those concentric circles. I mean, one of the goals is to fill those 730,000 some jobs, but the other is to fill the pipeline so that everyone understands that cyber is their business, that we do cyber for the sake of facilitating the needs of society. We've discovered that nearly every country, including Singapore, has similar challenges and are looking for solutions. And so this is an opportunity, I think, for us to collaborate with industry, with other countries, and by us I mean the large cybersecurity community, with academia, to figure out some of these hard problems. I love what Cisco is doing. There are other companies that are doing interesting things as well. But this is the journey that we've chosen to embark upon. And once we have all the answers, or once that we collaborate and get all the answers, we'll be happy to share.
Thank you. And I think as Bi-Kheng said, sharing best practice is so important. We're really at the end of our session. I'm sorry I couldn't see the audience questions, but we'll certainly try and find a way to weave that into maybe the next session or something like that. But before we end, I would like to invite our panel for a really quick cap in just one or two sentences, which is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to aspiring cyber leaders? We saw from the poll just now, we have a lot of people here who are about to maybe take their first leadership roles. They've already been 5 years or more in cyber. They might be just about to take their leadership roles. And you have a good number of people here who are on the fence about whether or not this is the industry for them. So what's the one piece of advice that you would give for them? Dorit, can I invite you?
Yeah, the base of cyber is think the opposite way and be creative about it. And the second thing for every leader is aim high. Don't just settle for the simple things. Go for the impossible.
Thank you. Bi-Kheng?
I'm speaking to the 67%. Be bold, take the plunge.
Thank you. How about Kemba?
Those were so amazing. The only one that I would add to it, and I would recommend that you take those, is that get out of your own way. remove imposter syndrome to the extent that you can, but get out of your own way and find that North Star and take that leap.
Thank you, Kemba. Gwenda, last word?
I think it's hard to come right at the end. A lot of what my fellow panelists have said have really resonated with me. I like the point about being curious all the time. So if you're curious about technology, curious about things that you're not, necessarily very familiar with, and wanting to problem solve, I think those are all really good traits, and just go for it. Even if it's not something familiar, just go for it and give it a shot.
Thank you so much. As we've heard, everyone's come from a very different background, has had different trajectories from their careers, but I think what everyone shares is that commitment to making cyberspace a more inclusive and a safer place for all. Be led by mission and purpose. Don't be scared, get out of your own way and solve hard problems, but solve it together. So please thank me in joining our speakers, BK, Dorrit, Kemba, and Gwenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ming Tan, and also to our esteemed panelists for this panel discussion number 1. You can if you want.
Oh, we have 8 minutes for questions and answers. Sorry, I was watching the clock. I was trying to be good and sticking to time. But if there are questions,
Just be a bad girl. Just kidding.
How has the context for cyber leadership evolved over the last few years, especially since COVID-19? I think that's a great question. Would anyone want to take that?
Take it, but now it works. Great. COVID-19 first show how much cyber is important, because think about doing it 20 years ago. Who would you talk to in your closed room? And then it showed the importance of security when everybody got connected from home or connected from everywhere at any time, and using modern technology, because the world used this time to transform all the way it does IT. So it's a completely different kind of world of IT today, and alongside with it, a very different space to defend, I think. It's something that got really, really fast accelerated. The last thing I'd say, leadership changed, because from the place of working at home, I know I'm leading an R&D organization that used to work only from the office. 80% of them choose to work less than 3 days a week in the office now. And leaders have to manage people working for them that they may have not seen them, or seen them very seldomly, or seen them as boxes on the screen in the Zoom session. And that's a very different leadership.
Different style of leadership, right? How to be present when you're not together. That's really challenging. Thank you so much, Dorrit. Do we have any other questions? Can we flash it up? I think I saw. In an apparent male-dominated environment, as is in cybersecurity, what are the main challenges that women might face when confronting stereotypes? Perhaps we can talk about if there are any stereotypes and if you've seen any. Anyone want to take that?
Which stereotype you want to start with? But I think the first stereotype we have to go with is, I think women care too much what people say about them or what people think about them. So first, do you like technology? Do you like to work in that environment? If yes, great. If it's not a pleasant environment, create your own companies and bring women to work with you. So the first thing is we should care a bit less about what being said. But the second thing is that there are differences in nature of people. So I don't think it's about men and women. It could be other tribes kind of behaviors. So you are in one tribe and the other tribe is a majority, and they behave as they behave. And so you either kind of find your way in or build your own second tribe in the same place. But the other tribe here may be more aggressive, maybe climbing up in a more aggressive way. So if you want to climb up, stand for the table, say that you want to progress. They may not offer this because they may assume if you would have wanted, you would have said it, even though in your tribe, you may not have said it. So there are multiple things that you need to understand about the different cultures. So it's not such just a stereotype. It's about different behaviors that drives you to do different things.
Definitely.
I think one important thing is for us, a female, not to actually be packed into the stereotype as well. Because sometimes we ourselves actually think that stereotype way. Because in cyber, like Amber say, is diversity. We have to think differently, and we are 50% of the population, and we need to be represented by it. So in a way, if you think there is a stereotype, then react differently. You have to, because you don't want to be packed into the stereotype. And you have to make sure that you have your value, like critical thinking, or the communication, the ability to talk to people, the ability to even listen is so important in this type of things, right? So, and we can bring that kind of skills into the cyber world, and why not? Yeah.
I completely agree with my colleagues. The way to overcome those stereotypes, and we can go through a litany of what they are and reframe the conversation, which I agree with. My way of moving past it is just being my authentic self and knowing my value. That's it. I show up, I know my value, and I am authentic. If I tried to be anything else, or if I react to the stereotype, I cannot bring my best self to the job.
I think that's so important because I think the importance for diversity and bringing women, it's not just to make up the numbers, right? Obviously, making up the numbers is important, but actually that having diversity in the teams creates a better outcome because you have some people thinking in opposite ways, as you mentioned. We have a minute left or two, and I just maybe wanted to pick up on the point, Gwenda, you mentioned, and there's a question, how do you manage and communicate cyber risk in the boardrooms? I mean, you touched on this a little bit. Do you want to maybe add to it, or
yeah, I think it's well, before I get to this question, if I could just make maybe half an intervention on the earlier one. What Campbell said really resonates with me. It's about being confident in the value that you bring to the discussion, and also what you said earlier, getting out of your own way. Sometimes, we might be our own kind of hurdle, But so be clear on what value you bring to the team and just go for it. On this question on communicating cyber risk in the boardrooms, I think it's helpful to turn it into a risk that business leaders can understand. So for instance, if we were to suffer a cyber incident, what is the risk to business continuity? What is the risk to losing like reputation risks or non-compliance to certain government regulations? What could be the financial risk to that? So if you can communicate it in a way that the business leaders can understand, straight away they would like, okay, I understand this, and therefore what do you need for you to make this risk go away? Right? They may not need to understand all the technical stuff, but you need to highlight the risk in a business language to them.
That people don't understand that cyber has a risk, but I think that the main problem is people think, well, why is it relevant for me? I mean, there is a lot of cyber risk for like audiences that are targeted, but I'm not targeted, so why is it relevant for me? So I think sometimes it's not about the ratio of risk, it's about kind of a storytelling. Why is it relevant for this organization as well? And not just, so there are audiences and boardrooms in which it's clear that it's target and there is risk. But in other ones, the main issue is not that there isn't a risk, the main issue is that it's not a risk for me.
So bringing it home and making it relevant, it sounds like, I think it's more than bilingual, maybe it's multilingual, it sounds like, contextualizing it. We're out of time. Thank you so much to everybody, and thank you to our panelists. Please put your hands together to thank our wonderful speakers.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ming Tan and our esteemed panelists. I would like you guys to remain on stage just for a little while. We're going to take a few photos, if that's okay with you. Thank you. Actually, I think we'd like you to stand or sit, photographer. He's got the power. Stand? Okay, please stand, ladies. Thank you. Thank you so much once again. We're going to turn around the stage quickly, but in the meantime, I'd like to remind you actually that if you're here in the studio, you don't have to submit your questions via the QR code. You can actually raise your hand and we can hear you speak. Okay, so we've got mic runners who will hand you the microphone once you raise your hand. It would be great to have a lively discussion going on for panel discussion number 2. And of course, for those of you who are joining us virtually, you can also submit your questions online. Just refer to the engagement panel to the right of your screen, I believe. And thank you so much for all the participation so far. Okay. I believe we have turned the stage around. So right now, I would like to introduce the next panel discussion on strengthening career pathways for women cybersecurity professionals. Our moderator for this session is Dr. Anuradha Rao, founder of Cyber Cognizance, joining us today. Dr. Rao, thank you. And joining her on this panel today, Ms. Abigail Bradshaw, head of Australian Cybersecurity Centre. Ms. Juliette Wilcox, Cybersecurity Ambassador, UK Defence and Security Exports of the Department for International Trade. Claire Rosso, Chief Executive Officer of ISC². And Ms. Mihoko Matsubaru, Chief Cybersecurity Strategist of NTT. Dr. Rao, please.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to the virtual audience. It's so great to be seeing people in person again. And we have a diverse group of panelists here, and I'm excited because each of you have such a different journey, and I want to explore a bit more about that journey. But before we begin, we also have a quick question for the audience to get our minds working a bit. Before we begin, when you think of a career in cybersecurity, what are some of the things that come to mind? So if you could just scan the QR code. When you think of a career in cybersecurity, what are some of the things that come to mind? And while we're waiting for that to happen, I want to start with asking the panelists. Like I said, you all are such trailblazers here. I'm really honored to be here on this panel. How did you enter the field, and how did you get to where you are today? I think the previous panel did ask that question, but I want to bring this up right up front, because we often think of cybersecurity as being something that each of us think of in a particular way, but it means different things to different people. So I'd like to ask this question to each of you, and I'd like to maybe start with Abby here. Okay.
Thanks, Anu, thanks to Singapore for an incredible International Cyber Week. You really are leaders in cybersecurity in our region, and dreadfully honoured actually to be here with a speaking part and amongst such amazing other women. So I find that these sessions work best when you're open and honest, so I'm going to share a secret with you. I actually wanted to be a music teacher.
Oh.
Yeah. And I failed the exams.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's actually been a lifelong lesson for me, actually, in seeing that when one door shuts, actually many others open. So I took my sorry self off to law school and studied law and studied Asian studies, and then I thought, just for something different, why don't I join the Navy? So I did that. Yeah, so I'm pretty much used to male-dominated working environments. That's never really been a problem for me. I spent my entire career in the national security community, outside of the Navy in various national security and intelligence environments. But one thing really drew me to, well, three things really drew me to this role. The first is that I love my country. And when you work in cybersecurity, you work in a field in which you can contribute to your country's prosperity, national security, and actually social unity all at once. And so it's an incredible gift to work in an environment like that. The second is that I really, you'll find this hard to believe, but I love people and I love talking. And actually, I find that a lot of technical people that I work with do not. And I don't mind actually sitting on boards and speaking robustly and dumbing language down. And actually, it's like linguistic study in my study of Indonesian, turning things into a language and deciphering it in a way and communicating in a way that not only board members can understand, but my mum can understand. And actually, we have responsibilities to have every Australian at every level, whether you're a critical infrastructure provider or a small to medium enterprise or a 16-year-old boy like my son who takes all of his knowledge from TikTok. So I really enjoy and embrace that challenge. And lastly, as the head of a CERT, fortunately, I love crisis. And I'm one of those people that see crisis and blood on the walls, and I'll walk towards it, not in the opposite direction. And I get an enormous amount of satisfaction in sorting out complex problems and putting things that are wrong right, and actually in assisting people to get back up on their feet in what could possibly be the worst possible day for them. So that's how I came to where I am. I think the important part out of that is not through a long list of technical study, but by actually understanding what was important to me from a mission and attributes perspective and matching that with the most incredible job in Australia, actually. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of interesting directions that you've taken along the way. That's so interesting. I'll ask the same question to Juliet. What's your journey been like?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you again to Singapore, which did have its own part to play in my journey. So a bit like Kemba earlier, I have a law degree, but decided pretty early on I didn't want to be a lawyer. The thinking part's good, but actually I was more interested in international affairs and the ability to travel and meet people all around the world and become sort of interested in their culture. So my career path through being in the Foreign Service for 30 odd years really was built around international relationships and partners and curiosity about how the world works. My career, if I'd had another one, I really wanted to be a gadget tester. There's something about early adoption. If I could afford it, I would have had everything. So as time went on and the world became more technically connected, I could sort of feel myself being drawn to that too. And I was fortunate to have a leadership role as our NCSC was established in about 6-7 years ago, thinking about across Whitehall what this would mean for us as a country, how we would use that ability to pull people together to understand how we protect our country better, but also how to develop the industry, how to develop the collaboration and the innovation. And thinking that through and really being aware that in the UK we were onto something there about how you thought about the standards in the future of the world. So as I became more engaged in that cyber from a policy and a creation of technology leadership perspective, I realised that you could marry the two together. And when the opportunity came to be in my role an ambassador for the industry, the cybersecurity industry I think is absolutely critical for the underpinning of our successful economies as well as protecting against threats. So that idea that I could combine the ability that I really have valued to make partnerships around the world and also to build the trust, I think, that is absolutely inherent in the whole cybersecurity industry. So that partnership and trust relationship thread ran through all my career to the point where in this role, which I've been doing for the last 6 months, I can see those opportunities to use them and to feel that I can both indulge my liking of gadgets with that international outlook and the willingness and interest in building relationships.
All right, thank you, Juliet. I'll move now to Claire.
All right, I would like to add to the field of unfulfilled dreams. My first goal in life, 5 years old, I wanted very specifically to play second base for the Los Angeles Dodgers. I can't throw, can't catch. My running's only so-so, and my hitting is really quite atrocious. However, I actually learned a lesson that I think is a result of why I'm here today, because I have played second base at Dodger Stadium. I wasn't a second baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers, but what I found was you can fulfill your dreams in other ways if you break it down to the component parts. And what is it I really wanted to do, and what do I have to offer? And so I think that fits nicely with my career in cybersecurity, because I have probably one of the most unusual careers, and that is I'm the CEO of a professional association that certifies cybersecurity professionals. So, and what I have in common with the profession is I am purpose-driven. I have that passion to serve the public and protect the public, which we see in cybersecurity professionals. I am a problem solver. I'm a critical thinker, an analytical thinker. I'm pretty good at working both by myself and in a team. I'm a decent communicator, maybe better than just decent. And I actually have a lot of those same skills that cybersecurity professionals have that make them successful. So while in some ways I'm surprised that I am in this role, in other ways I'm not surprised at all, because I have so much in common. And truly, I think I have the best job in all of cybersecurity.
Thank you, Claire. Miho.
Hi. Hello.
There you
Okay,
go.
it works. It wasn't hacked. So thank you so much, CSA, for having me back here in person again. So my background is something similar to Abigail and also Gwenda. So I started out my career in the Japanese Ministry of Defense, and I served there for 9 years. And then I really liked what I did for my country and in other partners. But I also started to realize that to really good in this field, I really need to study more. And because I was so passionate about international security, so I decided to pursue a master's degree. But when you think about an international security, if I only speak, think, analyze, and write in Japanese, it's not international, it's only domestic. So I decided to push the envelope to go to the United States to do my master's. Well, I know that in Singapore, Australia, and the United Kingdom had really great graduate schools, but you only provide 1 year program. And because I'm not a native English speaker, as you can tell, so I thought like a 2 years program would be better for me. So I went there. And then, because it was back in between 2009 and 2011, when the United States started to be more interested in cybersecurity, and then the American media outlets started to talk more about cyber attacks. And one of my classmates were eagerly looking for somebody who can quickly write about Asian cybersecurity back then. And she asked me, hey, Miho, do you know anybody who can write a paper on Asian cybersecurity quickly? And I was almost dying at that time in the United States, because it was my first time to live outside Japan. But I just raised my hand and took the chance. And because if you're in the defense field, you don't have many publications, probably zero. But so it was my first opportunity to put my name out there and then get the right exposures to the rest of the world. And it helped me to get my job titled cybersecurity later on. And it also helped me to get to know right people in right countries, in the right sectors. So when you really want to be successful, and also if you are passionate about what you like, then you should go for it. And then, but you also have to have the right exposures to do that.
Right. Thanks, Miho. What I'm hearing from all of you is these very diverse journeys. There have been failures, there's been learnings from them, there have been stepping stones to where you've reached now. And what I found in common was passion, the ability to take risks, problem solve. And I think I understand this because I work in the space of cyber safety and cybersecurity awareness, education, training. And if you don't love what you do and if you don't want to help people, it's difficult to be in this space because you're really there for the passion to help. So I love this common thread that I'm seeing here. Before we move on to the next set of questions, I was wondering if we could see, yes, we can see, there's this word cloud here. When you think of a career in cybersecurity, what are some things that come to mind? So there's words like compliance, better future for my kids, CEO, demand, zero trust, hacker. There's a lot of different things, balancing work and private life. There's also never ending. There needs to have tech knowledge, mail. I'm seeing a word called boring and exciting. So there's a lot of different things. That cybersecurity means different things to different people. And I'm glad that this reflects that. And I'm hoping we can go and convert the people that find it boring into the opposite. You know, let's figure out what's happening here. We have a lot of industry and government initiatives to encourage more women and more girls to join this field. My question is, how effective have these been? And okay, let me start with that. How effective have these been, and what could be done to make them even better in your opinion? Abby, would you take this?
Perhaps I'll just riff off one of the themes from the last panel, and that was the issue of stereotyping. Because I think actually where some of the barriers start are the stereotyping, and you could see that in some of those words as I was reading, going, no, no, no. And that is quite often the stereotype that we associate with a career in cybersecurity is a male in a black hoodie. I think I'm pleased to say that clearly that is nowhere near as glamorous and desirable as at least 4 of the other members on the panel today. And I think we really need to normalise that other view of what cybersecurity is in a vastly more diverse symbolism than even just what we have on the panel today. But most certainly we need to get rid of the guy in the black hoodie. I'm so over him, because it actually starts impinging on the bias of what it is to enter into a cybersecurity career, including even the advertising. And I've seen studies, and Ming, your institution's probably looked at this in terms of what does a picture of an ad, or what if you analysed all the ads for entry into cybersecurity jobs, what do they look like? The colours are probably blue and dark. The terminology which they use to describe the jobs are probably very masculine and have concepts which are highly technical, or perhaps for females they're always putting it beyond themselves as something that's far too complex, or an area for only really, really smart people. Well, I suggest I'm an example that will actually defy any of those sorts of assumptions. So I think in my own organisation, we actually got someone in to have a look at our advertising, and surprise, surprise, consistent with some of those global studies, found that we were subconsciously actually advertising in that way. And we took it upon ourselves to actually change that. And our advertising now is different colours, and it actually, we advertise in team, not individual. So our symbolism and our ideology and our little blogs that we put on cool platforms and all that sort of stuff talk about attracting people who want to be part of a team to solve complex problems through diversity and excellence, as opposed to individuals who are too smart or too cool for school. So there is that. The other things we do is really encourage good mentorship programs and examples. I think it's really important for women. You need to see to be. Women need, and girls need to see other girls and other women being successful, to understand that they can do it too. It's something that men have enjoyed for many, many years. There's no barrier to looking at those that are successful. So we in our organisation invest in both ends of the spectrum. To our Cisco colleagues' point before, we have a girls programming network where we bring in girls between year 4, which means in Australia about 12 years old, through to 16, and we bring them in cohorts and in safe groups. And we also invest heavily in the Australian Women in National Security Network. And we work very hard at, in conjunction with that program, a mentoring piece, which helps women, whether they're going to work for us or not is irrelevant, but to get up and do speaking events, to publish pieces of work, to apply for the next job. And we also celebrate our historic icons. Actually, cybersecurity is full of heroic women, which many of us don't celebrate. We actually had this market cornered at the end of the Second World War, because when all the men went off to do the fighting, the women in Bletchley Park, and in Australia, the women in a garage in Brisbane, and yes, they did work in a garage, they were the code breakers that really shaped the democracy that we live in today. So we have that strong background, and we celebrate those icons in our organisation. In my centre, in the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, I'm pleased to say that 50% of my senior executive service are women. That lady there, Jackie, she's a malware analyst. She's crazy cat. 52% of our graduates that we employed across the Australian Signals Directorate last year were female. We do that not by target, but by those other measures. And I know I've stolen heaps of time, but lastly, you do this by an even playing field. In our organisation, we feel very strongly about both males and females, and any gender for that matter, having equal opportunity to look after your children. We have rules about when meetings are to be held in core hours. We encourage men, and we hope to, and we advocate for equal paternity leave, for example, so that the caring responsibilities at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day aren't borne by one partner over another. We do our morning brief. It's shifted. It's not early in the morning like it is for the 25 years that I was in the Defence Department. It was always 7:30, and I always had to employ a nanny or be late in order to get to the operational brief. We do ours at 9:30, so that both parents have the opportunity to have a role in dropping the kids off at work. Yeah.
These are amazing steps, because, as you said, often the question for a lot of women is the whole issue of work and life and the lack of balance. But if companies or organizations start taking these steps to, like you said, level the playing field, we're already moving quite far ahead in terms of how can we think out of the box to support our employees. So I love that idea. Thank you. I'm going to pose the next question to you, Juliet, because the UK has been also at the forefront of several initiatives to try and level the playing field. Would you like to just tell us a bit more about those?
Yes, I will. So, I mean, obviously some of the things that we do are in common with Australia. I guess the two things I would add is the involvement of industry and the industry-government partnerships, but also the decision-making points where it's so important to have those interventions that help people think differently about the choices that they're going to make. So I think of particular interest in the UK are some of the initiatives with the very young. So some of the primary school initiatives about how they introduce teaching of computer and IT skills really at an early age. And you can layer on that other industry initiatives. So, for example, I know that there's a UK company who is sponsoring the computer science badge for Girl Guides. And so some of those things that just make sure that you get opportunities to think at a very early age as you're thinking about your future school choices, what is interesting, what is fun, what is exciting. We've had a Cyber First Girls programme for a while. And that is, and I remember hosting a session of this, and that's bringing together groups of 4 or 5 girls aged about 13, just as they're thinking about their higher education choices. And they're in a competition, and they're set against neighbouring schools, and they're solving problems. And there's sort of a level of excitement that's built into all of that, because it's both regional and then it becomes national. And you start to get a buzz around the whole of the school, and it infects the teachers as well, as they're there watching their girls compete against other schools and really getting sort of infused, fascinated by this as a potential career, and that influences their next stage of choices. And then I guess the third thing I would say, again, a government and industry set of partnerships that are worth encouraging, is I'm starting to see co-creation centres in places where there are universities and industry clusters. And so you're finding that as part of university training or as a part of apprenticeships training, you're starting to combine study with sitting beside industry and innovators and getting to see what it feels like and looks like to be working in industry. And so once you get the build up from encouraging more girls to think about STEM subjects, and then to layer onto that the excitement of competing and being as part of that industry and meeting practitioners at a quite young age. And then you move into that as you're studying, actually, what's a career look like in all of this? What are the options for me? And we can talk, a little bit about the different ranges of careers and styles and things that you can see people creating or being, or the influence that their own skills can have in that. Those sort of things help you then lead people into wanting to stay in that career. And there are other things that you need to do to keep them. So there's one thing encouraging people in, retaining as well. And all of the measures that Abby's talking about are also relevant to us, to everybody, about how you make sure that it's possible for people to stay in this space. But it's getting them in the door in the first place and really identifying some of the options for them. I think that's critical.
Right. I'm going to pick up on that and ask Claire, because this is something we were talking about earlier, Claire, which is when we have excellent initiatives like this, when we want to enthuse, you use the word enthuse, Juliet. We really want to make, if you're making the curriculum exciting for young girls till the career level, what are the challenges in then retaining them as part of the workforce?
Okay, see, I brought it up and she brought it up. She was asking questions about just attracting people into the profession. And I said, that's fantastic and it's really important, but man, you know what we gotta talk about? We gotta talk about retaining people within the profession. We are my organization's about to release our annual workforce study, and people will debate us on what the workforce gap is globally, but I will tell you this, globally, well, the workforce increased 11% this past year, the gap increased 26%. And here in Asia, which is a good news, bad news, it increased over 50%. And that's actually a signal to a recovering economy from the pandemic, but it's also a signal, and this is where I think this is actually a good thing, that organizations are starting to understand the strategic importance of cybersecurity within their business and therefore have a willingness to invest in it. But that didn't answer your question. So retention. Retention is really important. And when we actually talk to cybersecurity professionals about the workforce gap, the number one thing that they tell us isn't about recruiting people. They talk about retain and invest the people we have already in the profession. That is the most important thing any organization can do. And something we've learned recently that's really important, whether it's for men, women, is that we need to understand what people want. And it's what the people your team on your team want that's important. And those are the areas where you need to invest in programming. So you can do great things like put pay equity programs in place and make sure that you have career pathways available to people and even provide mentors. And those are all wonderful, valuable acts that will help retain people. But if what's important to your employees is that they have the flexibility to work remotely, then that's what matters most. And in fact, that turns out to be one of the most important aspects right now for people thinking about, do I want to stay in cybersecurity and or do I want to stay in the job I have now in cybersecurity? Because what we're finding is people love the flexibility of working remotely. And there was something up on the board earlier that talked about never ending, the 24/7 nature of this job. And there's a lot of different activities that organizations have put in place to try to deal with that. The best thing that has ever happened to that is actually remote work. Because while the job got harder, cybersecurity professionals have started to take care of themselves more. The people who work from home are more likely to take a little break during the day, to exercise during the day, to actually pay attention to their mental health. So things like that, doing the things that your employees care about, that can significantly help retaining people within the profession.
Thank you, Claire. One of the points that you touched upon just now is something that resonates with me as well. I work in the area of cyber wellness, and cyber wellness basically means when you're connected to the internet and you're always using digital devices, how do you ensure that you maintain your sense of well-being? And I think that's something that's often not considered enough, because we think the tech is an extension of our lives, which it is. So it also necessarily promotes problems in our lives. And the idea is, how do we understand how tech in our lives brings these problems to our social, mental, and emotional well-being? And I think it has to be integrated really deeply into every organization so that the people are at the center of these changes. So thank you for bringing that up. Miho, I know that you're very passionate, as the rest of the panelists are, about encouraging girls and women to join this field. Where do you think the challenges lie, if you would like to talk about even Japan perhaps, the cultural context, where do these how do these play a role?
So I actually really proud of my company, NTT. So NTT employee started the building up communities to bring in a diversity into cybersecurity a few years ago. It's called CTF for girls in different generations, because she found out that even though that girls or women are really interested in and passionate about cybersecurity, but they just don't know how to get into the field and how to remain in this field, as you said. So that's why she created workshops and also CTFs, catch the flag competitions for women's. Of course, both men and women are welcome to join, but to learn about, because cybersecurity is such a diversified field. It's not only about technology, but technology can be really diversified too. So you can learn about the different aspects of cybersecurity by attending different workshops in person, but you can also get connected and you can meet with your future champions or mentors, because champions and mentors can be both men and women, and because this is a shared responsibility to make the world better.
Thank you, Miho. Your idea of finding role models, how do we find those, or how do women and girls find these opportunities in the first place? So maybe we're down to our last minute and a half. So I guess we could ask that during the Q&A session, but I want to ask the panelists really quickly. So the previous panel asked this question about what advice would you give to women and girls entering this field, and if you would like to say one thing each before we wrap this up, something that you want to build on from the previous panel, perhaps. Abby?
Yeah, sure. I thought all the messages from the last panel were right about getting out of your own way and, sort of Nike, just do it. But they're easy to say and much harder to actually put into practice if you're one of those 67% of people wondering how to do it. The best things I've ever had in my career are a good network and a good mentor. Women are not great at building networks around them, and that's why, there are many other equivalents, but mine in Australia is the Australian Women in National Security Network, which will create those for women who don't. It didn't exist 25 years ago when I was there. But what's really important, this is just a really human thing, is to build a fan group. Men are great at it. You need people to tell you you're good. You need people to ring you and give you the confidence that what you did today, what you said today, how you presented, the paper that you produced was good. Because we're not good at doing this ourselves and celebrating the achievements that we made in difficult scenarios. But you also need people to pick you up when you fail, because you will. And you need a set of fans and friends that will ring in and say, that looked bad, was that uncomfortable, did that hurt? And help you back up again. It doesn't need to be a huge network, but you need a network and you need a mentor, because when you're staring at that job application like Gwenda was and deciding whether to rule yourself out or in, and you're tending to rule yourself out, you need someone to tell you you should put that job application in. So network and mentor.
Okay, thank you. And I think women tend to be harder on themselves than men are. So having that tribe, excuse me, having the tribe is really important, that just idea to motivate and encourage. Thanks, Abby. Juliet.
So I think I'd build on that, and the advice I always give to people is to say yes more often than you say no. And that's because quite often things will come along as opportunities or ideas or things that you will look at and feel a little bit scared about or not sure or think you don't fit or worry that you're not ready. But actually, you don't quite know where these things are going to lead you. So even if you're not sure quite where it's going, just say yes more often than you say no, and you might find that it gets you to quite interesting places.
All right, excellent piece of advice. Thank you, Claire.
Oh my gosh, such valuable advice. I used to have, when I actually had a physical office, a little thing hanging on the wall that says, do one thing every day that scares you, right? And so it feels to me like it fits with that. I had like a favorite thing that I might have to adjust based on what Dorit said earlier, because my favorite thing was, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I still think that that's a good thing. But I kind of liked what Dorit said too. First, she said something about jumping up on the table instead of just bringing a folding chair, which I felt more decisive, which that seemed good to me. But the other thing I think that she said that was really important that I feel strongly about too is try it. If it doesn't work, don't go run for the exit. Or if you do, go try it somewhere else. Because maybe that first group you were with, maybe those aren't your people. And there are radically different cultures within different organizations. So if the first thing you try doesn't work, try it again somewhere else or start your own thing. And that's a totally viable option.
Amazing. Thank you, Miho.
So I think that everybody here in person or virtually in the right platform. So Singapore International Cyber Week, and it's really commendable that Singapore Cybersecurity Agency has been doing this to bring together a diversified group of people from students up to the CEO or the head of the organization, and also ambassadors for cybersecurity to meet and get connected to understand what kind of threats are out there, and also to talk about the best practices and solutions, and also what kind of job opportunities are out there in different levels in the different countries. So this is to learn about and also to get connected, to meet and get to know the future mentors and also role models. So I really encourage everybody in this room and also on our virtual platforms to take advantage of us, and also the Singaporean cybersecurity agencies, because the Singaporean government has been really tremendous efforts to do this, to bring together right level of cybersecurity talent to make the world more resilient.
All right, thank you. Just such inspiring words from all of you. Don't fear saying yes. Take the chance. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Look for different avenues. Build your tribe. Just golden nuggets of information. Thank you. We have a question now, which says, in a male-dominated environment in cybersecurity, where gender discrimination may potentially exist, what advice and solutions would you provide for women who do face such challenges within the workplace? Whoever would like to take this. Claire? Okay.
Do a first pass at that. I got a couple answers to that, because I think it's not just a black and white answer. I think one is there's a tremendous amount of bias in the workplace. Some of it's conscious and a whole bunch of it's unconscious. And people don't actually always understand what they do that gets in the way of providing opportunity to be inclusive or provide advancement opportunities for individuals within their organization. So first, to organizations, I'd say invest in understanding that, be really purposeful about your inclusivity practices and your equity practices, and help all your employees explore unconscious bias. The second thing that I would say, though, is there's sometimes when it is conscious. And I would strongly urge anyone who is being discriminated within their workplace to speak up. And it will speak volumes about your organization and your choice whether to stay with that organization when you see how they respond to you speaking up. Because really it doesn't matter what an organization says it believes in or what it says its culture is. It is the bad behavior that it accepts and supports that truly tells you how what an organization's culture is. And again, if it's not the right place for you, go somewhere else, because there are a lot of good places to go work out there.
Thank you, Claire. Julie, yes.
I think the thing I would add to that, though, is also to try to make sure your organisation is one where there are no bystanders. So you can act as somebody who's acting on behalf of others as well. And if your organisation creates the kind of atmosphere that allows for that, then you can make progress. If it doesn't, and if people are too afraid and end up being bystanders and watching this happen, then that's another reason to not stay.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? I mean, yes, we have someone raise their hand there.
Hi, thank you so much for a really interesting panel. I've heard executives talk throughout this conference this week about the difficulty in hiring and retaining diverse candidates in this industry in particular. And, from an economic perspective, that should just mean dollar signs to any female or minority candidate who's interested in this sector. So is that not happening because of some of the socialization issues that you guys have spoken to and the last panel have spoken to? Is it just a matter of getting younger girls interested in coding earlier and women finding out about these opportunities? Or is there another issue in the industry itself, whether that's toxic culture? Like, what's the problem? It might be several of them.
Abby?
I'm happy to start. Look, I think it's a mixture of things. I don't think it's just awareness, and I don't think it's solely access to STEM training. There are programs that have been going for many, many years now to address that. I think to the point that I made before, there are issues of bias and stereotyping, and I think particularly in the way the roles are portrayed, that we need to correct. This is kind of weird, but an example, in Australia, I recently did a presentation to a board of journalists, and shortly after I was rung by Vogue magazine, and they said, would you do a feature in Vogue? And I was like, drop the mic. This is exactly what we need. Now, sadly, I had to give the Jimmy Choo and everything back at the end of it. But I kind of had to get over myself, actually, especially when I was getting the questions about how do you want to be dressed, and, I had to get over my own conservative self because I felt it was truly important to have a publication in a completely different sphere. I've been in IT news and all those other ones bazillions of times, but really accepting it was super important ideologically for us to appear in the Vogue magazine, in the flash kit, but getting our messages mainstream and getting a different vision of what women would be like. And it caused such a kerfuffle amongst my public service conservative friends that we would do such a thing. But I would do it every day of the week. And I think we need more of that, more public portrayal of us differently, different advertising, a different stereotype associated with the roles. I think there needs to be a much better understanding of what cyber is and the enablers and the contribution and the diversity of the team. I have an organisation of many hundreds of people, but not all of those people are technical. There are linguists, there are communication experts, there are psychologists. Yes, there's programmers and malware analysts, but they don't make up the vast proportion of the people who do the magic in the organisation. And I think taking a different approach to cybersecurity, that it isn't necessarily always a specialist skill set, but actually a mainstream language that we all need to be coherent in, and not actually suggesting that, as Dorrit said, is someone else's role. It's actually a competency that we all need to hold, whether you're a member of a board or whether you're an owner of a smart device.
Okay, thanks, Abby. I think we are out of time, as the 00s indicate. But I would like to thank the panelists, because the idea was to ask all of you, the experts, whether young women, girls, older women, whether they would feel that there are these diverse opportunities and roles. And listening to you, I feel that there are. I think the visibility needs to be increased. And I hope the rest of the audience has understood along with me that we need to understand where to go to find these opportunities. There's a diversity of them, and cybersecurity doesn't mean just any one thing. There's a lot of roles and a lot of opportunities there. So before we sign off, I have one last final question for the audience, and it's a poll. So if you could just, again, scan that QR code and let us know, how do you feel after this session? So we have a couple of options. One is rejuvenated, I hope so, and set to continue with my work in cybersecurity. The second is motivated to search for new avenues in cybersecurity now that we know that there are more. The third is inspired to join the cybersecurity community in the future. There are some who may be neutral, still not sure that this field is for me, fair enough. And the fifth option is, this is not my cup of tea. So if you could please let us know how you feel, that would really help us. And thank you very much on behalf of CSA, and it was a pleasure having you all. I'd like the audience to join me in thanking the panelists as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rao, and our esteemed panelists. I'm going to have to trouble you guys to stay where you are. We're going to do some photos. Yeah. So let me invite the photographer up. I believe he would like you to stand up. Yes, stand up, please. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. This is the end of SICW Women in Cyber 2022. We'd like to invite you to proceed to the foyer. There are refreshments for you, and of course, network all you want. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again next year.